I want you to think back to a regular school week you're having and you're teaching history. Now, I want you to think, is your child absorbing every fact that they can, taking their quiz, doing probably even well on their quiz, but then 2 weeks later, not remembering anything? If this happens to you, your child is not the problem. Often the way we teach history is what the problem is. Hi, I'm Christine with Rabbit Trails Homeschool, and we are having a whole history focus this month. And so I want to talk about some common mistakes that we make while we teach history in our homeschool. So first of all, it's a little dark in here. I didn't feel like grabbing my big light, and it is super thunderstorming outside, so I apologize if there is some thunder in the background. But I didn't want to wait to start recording this, and I wanted to get this out there to you guys because I feel like it is so important to cover all of these topics when it comes to history. I'm getting like all these alerts on my phone. I hope I don't have to turn it off. Sorry if I just seem distracted. I got like 3 alerts popped up. Okay, so the first mistake that we make is that we often overload our kids with information. We are throwing dates at them. We are throwing names at them. We are covering every single battle. I remember my mom complaining about when I was studying history growing up. I went to public school, and she's like, you guys went over and over and over and over all of these battles year after year. Do I remember any of that? No, I don't remember any of it. In fact, I hated history in school, and it wasn't until I started teaching my own kids history in a different way that I started completely falling in love with history. So you may have that same experience that you're going to think back. I did great in school. I got really good grades. I did well on all of my tests and quizzes, but I was that kid. I forgot it the very next week. It's because we were approaching history as these isolated facts and not a story. I love the kind of name that history has because it's his story, right? And a lot of times we don't think of history as like God's creation or anything like that. That's more of like a science topic. But even if we're talking about American history, it's still God's story, right? Because it is still what he has allowed to happen throughout our history. It is still what he knew was going to happen, whether it was good or bad. Like, it was not a surprise to him. So the good, the bad, the ugly, it is still his story, and it is a story. And so that's my favorite approach to history, is to teach through stories. And so we don't want to expect our kids to absorb every single detail. We don't need them, especially at the younger ages. They don't need to know those dates. Even if they don't remember someone's name, but they remember what they did. They remember those stories. They remember the big picture. That is our goal to start with, because as they get older, they're going to be able to remember those dates better. It may not even be till college or adulthood. Like, I did terribly with dates still in high school. But as those stories started mattering to me because they were presented as stories, I then remembered those dates and those names so much more easily than when they were isolated facts, even as an adult. So if you think about it and you struggle learning about that stuff as an adult, it's going to be really hard to expect our kids to remember that and to absorb it unless they're learning it through a story. So those facts without the context just don't stick, right? So a good example for you, which if I keep glancing over, obviously it's reflecting my glasses. I have my notes over here, so I apologize. But so is it easier to remember that the Wright brothers flew in 1903? Or is it easier to remember the story of 2 bicycle mechanics who refused to give up until a machine got off the ground? What are you going to remember? I have learned thoroughly about the Wright brothers. I am from Ohio. We've even recently taken a couple of trips to Dayton and have seen some of the Wright brothers historic sites and museums and their actual like flyer that they built. I still could not tell you what year it happened in. But I remember clearly the bicycle shop, and I remember clearly these flyers. And we even, oh gosh, it's probably 10 plus years ago now, took our kids to Kitty Hawk, and they were able to see the hill, sort of, because it's all kind of different than it used to be, but the hill and the place where they flew the first airplane. And so they're introduced to this stuff through stories. They're able to go see these things. Are they going to remember that so much more than learning the date that they first flew? Yes, of course they are. So facts without context aren't going to stick, but having all that context through books, through field trips, through whatever it is, kids are going to soak that up. Another thing is history is obviously about people. And so learning about inventors, explorers, families, artists, scientists, even ordinary people who did extraordinary things. These are things our kids are going to remember, especially when they're connected to a story. Stories also create emotional connections. And so kids are going to remember characters, right? If you remember your favorite book growing up, you're going to remember those characters. And so when history is presented in story form, kids are going to remember those characters. And then eventually those characters are going to become real life people for them and not just this fictional character, right? Because they are going to absorb things the way that kids can absorb. And so a lot of stuff in history feels way far away and way like just unattainable. But as they grow and they remember those characters, they'll no longer seem fictional. They'll start to seem real because they'll realize like these were legit people, right? They really lived. They really did these amazing things. They're also going to remember their struggles. They're going to remember their victories. They're going to remember their heartbreaking moments, all these different things. And that's why living books are so powerful when we're learning about history. Another thing is literature is really going to make this history come alive. So if we have one picture book or even a novel, do the read alouds with your kids, guys, especially your older kids. Throw those novels in there as well, even historical fiction. That is my favorite genre to read, even as an adult. I love historical fiction. And I learn about a lot of stuff in history, even if all of it's not 100% true. I'm wanting to seek out all that information. I'm wanting to see what was real and what was not real in these different novels. And so don't feel like if it's not in textbook form that those kiddos can't enjoy it. They're going to love it. But when they're reading these books, it's going to open the door to conversation, and it's going to make that entire time period come alive for them. And it also is going to lead into lessons in geography, into writing. I love turning history into writing projects. It's so easy to do. It can lead into Bible lessons. It can even art. That's something that we incorporate huge at Rabbit Trails is every single lesson that we have has an art study because there's so many amazing pieces out there that we can learn about history through this art. And so that's actually my daughter's favorite part of doing history is doing our art studies and replicating a painting or a sculpture or whatever it is. And she remembers these things. Like she has seen years later, like these famous portraits or whatever it is. And she's like, oh my gosh, Mom, I made that. And I'm like, you sure did. And some of them I've saved because I just love them. I probably should hang them up in our basement. That's where all of like our school stuff is stored. But like that makes it come alive for her, right? And so she's able to read these living books. She's able to do art, whatever it is. There's tons of geography tie-ins, and it makes it come alive for them a way that a textbook just isn't going to. So something to ask yourself is my child just learning facts, or are they beginning to truly understand the people and the stories that are shaping our world? So that is my challenge for you for this coming school year especially, is ask yourself, are you just teaching them the facts, or are you teaching them so that history is coming alive for them? So if you want history to come alive for you in your homeschool, we have some free history lessons you guys can check out, all literature-based, all hands-on, all amazing. So I'm gonna put those down below for you guys so you can see what literature-based history looks like, and you can see how it can transform your homeschool. And of course, if you have any questions, please put them in the comments. I would love to answer them. But anyways, I'm glad that the thunderstorm did not keep me from recording this. So thank you for bearing with me, and hopefully I can adjust my settings so that the video is not so dark. But if not, it's cool. We're hanging out in this nice stormy day together. So anyways, I hope you guys have a great day, and I will catch you next time.